There are natural laws, so why shouldn't there be marketing rules? Ries and Jack Trout, who wrote the best-selling book Positioning and are well-known marketing consultants, say that you can make a beautiful airplane, but it will never fly if you don't follow the laws of physics, especially gravity. Then they ask, why shouldn't there be marketing rules that must be followed to start and keep winning brands? In the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing, Ries and Trout put together a list of 22 new rules that can help you understand and win in the global marketplace. From the law of leadership to the law of the category to the law of the mind, these useful insights have stood the test of time and show a clear way to make successful products. You're on your own if you break them. Ries and Jack Trout's The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. Break them at your own risk is a standard guide to marketing strategy. Each of the book's 22 parts is about a different immutable law of marketing. Chapter 1. The Law of Leadership. This chapter talks about why being first in a market is important and what perks come with it. The writers say that being first helps a business become a market leader and sets the standard for other businesses to follow. Chapter 2. The Law of the Category. This chapter talks about why it's important to give your product or service a category and what it means to be the best in that category. Chapter 3. The Law of the Mind. This chapter talks about how important perception is in marketing and how you need to be in a certain place in the consumer's thoughts. Chapter 4. The Law of Perception. This chapter talks about how important it is to shape the way a customer thinks about your product or service and how important it is to make your product stand out from the competition. Chapter 5. The Law of Focus. This chapter talks about why it's important to focus on a certain market or segment and what it means to be the leader in that segment. Chapter 6. The Law of Exclusivity. This chapter talks about how important it is to own a word or phrase in a consumer's thoughts and the benefits of being the only company associated with that word or phrase. Chapter 7. The Law of the Ladder. This chapter talks about why it's important to put your product or service at the top of a ladder of benefits and what you need to do to be successful. Chapter 8. The Law of Duality. This chapter talks about how important it is to know what your product or service is not and how you need to place yourself in relation to that opposite. Chapter 9. The Law of the Opposite. This chapter talks about how important it is to find a selling point that makes your product or service stand out from the rest. Chapter 10. The Law of Division. This chapter talks about why it's important to divide your market into segments and what the benefits are of focusing on one section. Chapter 11. The Law of Perspective. This chapter talks about how important it is to see things from the consumer's point of view and how important it is to place your product or service in a way that makes sense to them. Chapter 12. The Law of Line Extension. This chapter talks about the risks of expanding your product line and how important it is to focus on your main product or service. Chapter 13. The Law of Sacrifice. This chapter talks about how important it is to make changes to be successful and how important it is to keep your attention on your main product or service. Chapter 14. The Law of Attributes. This chapter talks about why it's important to focus on the features of your product or service and what it means to be the best in a certain feature. Chapter 15. The Law of Candor. This chapter talks about why it's important to be honest and open with your customers and what good things can happen when you accept your weaknesses. Chapter 16. The Law of Singularity. This chapter talks about how important it is to be different and how important it is to be the only company that can offer a certain product or service. Chapter 17. The Law of Unpredictability. This chapter talks about how important it is to be flexible and change with the market. Chapter 18. The Law of Success. This chapter talks about the risks of success and the need to always come up with new ideas and improve to stay ahead. Chapter 19. The Law of Failure. This chapter talks about how important it is to learn from mistakes and how you have to be willing to take risks if you want to succeed. Chapter 20. The Law of Hype. This chapter talks about the dangers of hype and why it's important to focus on giving your people what they want. Chapter 21. The Law of Acceleration. This chapter talks about how important it is to be the first in a market and the perks of being able to grow quickly. Chapter 22, The Law of Resources. This chapter talks about how important it is to use your resources well and how important it is to focus on your main product or service. Ries and Jack Trout wrote the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing, which is a complete guide to marketing strategy. The book talks about a lot of different things, like how important it is to be the first in a market, how dangerous it can be to add more products to your line, and how important it is to focus on your core product or service. This book is a great resource for anyone who wants to be successful in marketing, whether they are a marketing professional who wants to improve their plan or a business owner who wants to grow their brand. Thanks for watching our Amazon book review. If you found our review helpful and you're interested in checking it out for yourself, we've included a link to it in the description below. By clicking on that link, you'll not only get more details about it on Amazon, but also support our channel at no cost to you. So go ahead and click that link to grab your copy of the book and dive into an exciting reading journey. Happy reading, and thanks for your support.